Today I want to talk about care of things. I've been thinking about this topic a lot lately for a number of reasons, one of which is the question of how do we honor the earth spirits where we live. This is something we chant every morning in the Soto Zen liturgy, as they say, in our chants, morning service, choka. We chant, we honor the earth spirits of this place. So many years ago, I started thinking a lot about this when I started really chanting in English for the first time, and wondered, what are the earth spirits, or who are the earth spirits, and how do we honor them? And we can't honor them unless we know who we're honoring. How do we find out about the earth spirits? What are the earth spirits? So this is an ongoing question, and I'm leaving this question open. I'm leaving this question open so that you can find your own way in too. How do we honor the earth spirits where we live? We had a discussion about this in our Friday morning breakfast discussion a few weeks ago that I'm told was quite expansive and rich. I wasn't able to be there for the whole discussion, and that's just fine with me, because again, this is really an unanswerable question. At the same time, the answer is right in front of us. When I asked some Japanese monks about this, they said, oh, well, earth, water, rocks, what? Why do we make it a big deal? And when I asked a Mohican person about it, because that's the region where we live, he was like, oh, okay, honor it. That's a great question. I know how to teach you about that. And so this was at a conference or a group of people in a particular workshop, and he took us all outside, and we did a ceremony of gratitude of, I give thanks for the earth. I give thanks for the trees. I give thanks for the plants, for the large birds, for the small birds, for the sun, for the sky, and we went through everything around us. And I really loved, I love those two bookends, which are saying exactly the same thing. Oh yes, I can answer that. We'll take great care in the way. I'm not just giving you a simple answer. And on the other side, oh, it's really easy. The answer is very simple. What's the big deal? And what I appreciate about these two ways of seeing it are, there's no separation. There's no me and that thing over there. There's just the whole world. And then I, thought a lot about how we, in our so-called Western culture, or a lot of us are from a Judeo-Christian background of some sort, how we separate into things. Like as if things are something over there and we're over here. So a lot of different ideas around this topic for me. So I really wanted to, and this topic might extend for a few weeks, I'm not sure. I like to keep stirring this topic. And today I'd like to start with Dogen Zenji and Dogen's teaching on care of things. And I'll talk about this from the Tenzo Kyokun, or instructions for the cook. Something unique about Dogen Zenji, which is unique but not unique. I mean, it was very, it's unique. Okay, we'll leave it there. Is we always, in Buddhism, we honor all sentient beings. We live for the benefit of all sentient beings. And Dogen extended all sentient beings to insentient beings, whatever we call insentient. Because what is insentient anyway? Doesn't a tree have life? Doesn't a rock have life? So for him, sentient beings are all, literally all. not people or animals. Like, where does sentience, what is that anyway? Where does it stop? So our mind creates these separations, and these separations hold us back. And when we are open to exploring and learning from a point of view of creativity, the whole world opens. Lately, I've been listening through the library to an Audible book. I've been listening to Braiding Sweetgrass, which I started many times, but I just never finished. And now I'm really loving the audio version of it because the author reads it or talks about it. She doesn't read, she just tells you her story. It's really nice. So she's talking about trying to learn her native language, which she never learned as a child. And I think it's Potawatomi. So she's from a particular place where her grandparents were taking to boarding schools where they didn't get to speak their own language. So one thing she observes as she's trying to learn the language as a beginner is how many verbs there are compared to English. And at first that really bugs her. You know, why can't we just call objects objects? But then she has a sense of curiosity. Why is tree a verb? Being tree, or something like that. And why is, a rock, a sky, things we see, an animal, a verb, not a noun? As we, nouns and verbs are our thing, right? So again, she's like, oh, all these verbs, I have to figure out how to conjugate all of them. So yeah, that's hard. And how did it change your perception when you see tree as verb? Being, I forget exactly how she describes it, but what I heard is being tree. Tree as being in a verb way. So yesterday when I was outside, I tried it on. Being tree. Oh, I see the tree. The tree feels different when you see it as an active, an action, rather than something passive. It has life, which we know, but it doesn't just have life. The tree is life. It completely changes your perception. And this is what, in this country, in the United States, part of what we lost when we lost the languages and the cultures and the spiritual practices of this earth before we came here. Well, we can learn and expand our perception. Tree. It's harder to cut down a tree, I think. It's harder to think about because I'm not going to cut down a tree today. It's harder to think about cutting down a tree when a tree is a verb, when a tree is life. And then when we do, we would want to give gratitude and thank it and be respectful and handle it nicely. Because we do have to eat and to live and to be with each other. One time when I was a child, I was really puzzling on what happens to trees. We lived in the forest and I love the trees. I knew the trees quite well. I knew them intimately, each tree. I had one particular tree that I loved especially. I think a lot of kids do. Does that feel familiar? Yeah. So why do we lose that? And likewise, for those who, for those who are around kids, children talk to animals and snails and, you know, what else? All trees and flowers. You could see a child having a whole conversation with a dandelion. That's not a big stretch, is it? Well, why do we lose that? How do we lose that? How can we open up to that? Again, from our adult point of view. So I asked my dad about the trees, and I think I'd seen something about logging in Alaska, which was a place, of course, I'd never been. I grew up in Florida, and the trees were quite different. But what I saw, and the trees were so big compared to our Florida trees. And I said, Dad, what happens when, you know, how can people just cut down the trees that are there? You know, it's really sad a little. And this was a really special moment with my dad for me. My question was I wasn't a small child. Maybe I was 11 or 12, something like that. But I wasn't old either. And it was a very genuine question. And my dad's answer was also very genuine. So he didn't, you know, he wasn't preaching to me. He just was answering. And I said, how can people just cut down the trees? Why is there such a controversy around this, you know? And he said, well, the trees are there for us to take and to use. And I said, by whom? You know, or I didn't say whom probably, but, you know, where, you know, how do we know that? And he said, well, they're from God. And then I said, well, what happens when there are no more trees, when we cut them all down? And he said, that we're just out. We're out of trees. And then he said, they're put here on this earth for us to use. And I didn't know the fancy vocabulary word for that way of seeing the world until I went to college many years later. But I understood later that it was something taught and a philosophy, this manifest destiny. But he wasn't bad. You know, that was the way he understood it. And he loved trees and he loved the forest. But his perception and his view was that they're here for humans to use, to appreciate. But they're a gift. So we're really not that far apart, are we? Until we separate. That we humans are better than these trees. We humans are better than the bears or the deer or whomever you want to eat. That we humans are better. That's the separation that comes in. And that separation takes us out of true reality. How can we come back into true reality? So I keep saying I'm going to come back to Dogen, but we pay attention. Start off by paying attention. I said I was going to talk about care of things today, but I think I want to talk about care of mountains. Or maybe I'll save that for next week. We'll come back to the trees. I said it would be a long, maybe convoluted talk. Tenzo Kyokun is, again, instructions for the cook. And Dogen Zenji, the founder of Soto Zen, is teaching us how to handle things. We should handle things with greatest care, really being the thing with no separation. When we're chopping a vegetable, we are the knife. We are the vegetable. We are the cutting board. We are this body. all together as one body. When we do this in the temple, we do this in our life outside of the temple as well. And it helps us to understand how important it is to care for everything, not just for our own benefit, but for all benefit of all beings. So let's start off with our environment. Let's start off with Dogen, of course, sorry. Just the section on care of things, which is again related to the kitchen. Instructions for the cook. Keep your eyes open. Do not allow even 1 grain of rice to be lost. Have you ever harvested rice? Many people here haven't, but you've harvested other things. I think of this a lot with sesame seeds. They're so tiny, right? And they cost a lot. They're very valuable. So what have you harvested? Zucchinis. Do you value zucchinis in the summer when there's so many of them everywhere all the time? Tomatoes. How many of you have grown tomatoes? In the summer, there's a lot of tomatoes, but in the winter, none. What else have you harvested? What feels precious to you when you've harvested it?
Strawberries.
Strawberries, yeah. Strawberries, no matter how many there are, feel precious. When I was a child, my mother grew strawberries, and in the summer, every day, I would go to the garden with a big bowl from the kitchen, about this big. I don't know, I was a child, so maybe it wasn't this big, but it was this big to my child size. And I would come back with it piled up to the top so that it was really hard to carry. So it's not, harvesting strawberries isn't the hardest thing to harvest. Nevertheless, the strawberry is a really beautiful and delicious thing. And they don't come in the winter. So they're especially precious. But it takes a lot of work to plant the strawberries, to grow the strawberries. We would put ground cover so that we could pick them easily on top of that. So we would start by tilling the earth. My dad usually did that. He had a little tractor. And then we lived in Florida, so we would mix in some kind of fertilizer, usually chicken manure. And then we'd have to make a mound for the strawberries. And then in the mound, we would cover it with the covering. And then we would go around and plant the strawberries, each plant. And then it took time, right? You have to water the strawberries. You have to pull the weeds. You have to give them all that they need. And then finally, the white strawberries come. And then the first red strawberry comes. And then a rabbit comes along and eats the first one always, no matter how much you've waited for it. But soon there's a lot of strawberries. And when you've gone to all this effort to grow every aspect of the strawberry, you understand how precious one strawberry is. And you don't waste it. So we're honoring how things came to us. We're honoring the earth that helped us to grow the strawberries. We're honoring all the people who came together to give us the strawberries, the chickens. We're honoring the tools and the people who made the tools, and our mother who taught us how to plant strawberries and grow strawberries. We're honoring all who came before us and cultivated these strawberries so that we could have cultivated type of strawberries. And we're honoring the wild strawberries that came before these big, massive, cultivated strawberries. We're honoring all of it as we honor one strawberry. And this is the care with which This is why we don't waste even one grain of rice. When we're cooking, we use all parts of the vegetables that we can. We don't eat carrot greens, but we don't just whack off half of the carrot and throw it in the compost. We very carefully cut right to the point where we can eat without wasting any more. And we do this with all of the vegetables and all the foods. We carefully wash the rice with love. And that care goes into the food that we're cooking. And then usually we save the rice water because it has the starches in it. And we can water our plants, including our strawberries, with the rice water. All of it is a complete cycle of existence and interdependence. Do not allow even one grain of rice to be lost. Wash the rice thoroughly, put it in the pot, light the fire, and cook it. There's an old saying that goes, see the pot as your own head. See the water as your lifeblood. See the pot as your own head. See the water as your lifeblood. I can tell today's talk will be slow. One sentence is probably enough. See the pot as your own head. So we don't bang down the pot, throw the pot. I don't even like the pot to go into the dishwasher, although sometimes you have to do that for making things sanitary. The pot gives us the ability to cook the rice. And somebody made that pot for us so that we can cook the rice. We treat it very carefully. It's precious. And we honor the pot. We honor the metal the pot is made of and the heat that allows the pot to cook. We honor the rice that goes into the pot and the water that goes into the rice. All of it. Really all of it. When we make rice at my teacher's temple, he's always, I had trouble getting it straight in the beginning because I didn't know the word ito, which was spring. And he said, use the spring water, use the spring water, use the spring water. So for the offerings to the Buddha, the water offerings, for cooking the rice, we use fresh spring water only. We don't use the spring water for washing our hands or for washing the dishes. We use it for things that require spring water. So, see the pot as your own head. See the water as your lifeblood. See the water as your lifeblood. Some years back, I had the opportunity to go to Standing Rock when they were holding this massive prayer service. I went as a chaplain, invited by the elders. And it really completely changed my life, as I've said many times. So I was telling my teacher some of the aspects of it later. Some of you might recall that it was a prayer for care of the water. They were very concerned about an oil pipeline that was going to go under their main water source and under a river they consider sacred, which is basically all rivers, are sacred, and this particular river specifically gives water to the people in a certain area. So people were praying for the water and teaching and saying, and it became like a slogan, water is life, water is life. It's not water is like life, not water gives life, not our blood has water, not water is a good thing, water is something we need. No, water literally is life. And this is how we embody water. By living, by living. This is our blood. Water is our blood. Water is life. So when I told my teacher this, he said, exactly. And that's the problem, is people separate it out as something that you get, a thing that you can go and get, or a thing that you can put in a cup and drink. It's not a thing. Water is life. Trees are life. The sky is life. When we see the world in this way, we can't help but to care for all things. It's very natural not to waste, not to grab. When we see the tree, the water, the earth as commodities that we could buy, that I want to get for myself, then we separate out. And this harms the earth, certainly, when we're buying it and grabbing it and making it into something for myself that's not beneficial to others. But it also harms us. This separation harms us because it takes us out of true reality. And this is one of Dogen's essential points. I keep trying to come back to Dogen here, and I will eventually. Our thoughts and our ideas are these creations of our mind that we can get really enamored by. This thought that I'm separate from water, this thought that I can buy water. Where I'm from in Florida, there's a really beautiful spring where I grew up, and I spent my childhood going to this spring to swim. My mother spent her childhood going to this spring to swim at Chitucknee. It's a beautiful place. It has a cave, it has many caves. It's Florida, so there are limestones. And when my mother was a child, they would go, usually when at the end of the harvest season, when they weren't so busy, and they would all go to the spring, not so far from her house, and they would take a watermelon or 2 or 3, because they grew watermelons, and they would put them in the cave in the natural spring, and then they would swim, and then they would eat cold watermelon. When I was a child, we went to that spring frequently. There was a time when I loved the spring so much. It's still maybe my favorite place in the world. When I would go down to visit my mother, I would, no matter what time of year, I would jump in there. It doesn't matter winter or summer because the temperature of the water is always the same. So it's the spring. So it's very, very cold in the summer, but in the winter it feels quite lovely and almost warm. So it doesn't matter when, I would jump in. So when I was a child, there was a time when I had laryngitis and I lost my voice. And some friends of my parents and their children came to visit us for a few days, and everyone got to swim, but not me, because I had been sick. I was so sad, and I was sitting on the edge. I really wanted to get in. Oh, I just really wanted that water. Everyone else is in there. And I was just on my little limestone rock watching. And finally my mother said, "Go ahead, you can get in." And look at me, I'm about to cry. Thinking about it, I'm so happy. So I jumped in and I swam and I let the water just like be around me. I was so happy. And then it came time to go and I got up. You had to crawl on these limestone rocks to get out of the spring. And I had a voice. Water is life. Recently, a water bottling company wants to put my spring's water into plastic bottles and sell them to people. Please don't buy them. Please don't buy them. As people came together and felt strongly that that was a bad idea, so I don't think it will happen. But it's happened at other springs all over Florida. Who wouldn't want to drink this delicious water, this life-giving water, this healing water, this same water that the original Spaniards who first tried to conquer my state, Florida, mine, felt was the fountain of youth. Who wouldn't want to try that water? Come and try it, share it, jump in, open your mouth, drink it, but don't sell it. It doesn't belong to you. Water is life. When we learn to care for the world around us with this much reverence, then everything in our life becomes an act of reverence. When we separate out by making things out here and me over here, by making our thoughts and our ideas something we think of as real, it separates us from true reality, which is the beauty of the entire universe. It's really wonderful. When we talked about the earth spirits, people shared stories of sparkles on the water, of sounds of wind, of the time they were lost in the forest. When we treat our entire world as precious, then it is. It's that simple. And who doesn't want to live in that kind of a world? And who doesn't want to offer that to others? Our whole life becomes a prayer of reverence.